All right, Miranda. Well, this is Greg. I don't know if you can see me or not. I'm going to turn you over to Michael Wright. He is a professor at Tulsa University, screenwriter, and some other things as well. And he's going to moderate the Q&A today. But I just wanted to say on behalf of the Circle Cinema, thank you for doing this. And here's Michael.
Hi, Miranda. Nice to meet you.
Hi, good to meet you.
Thanks for your wonderful, wonderful film. This is my first viewing of it. I really loved it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I want to just throw this open for questions to anybody. So, hand up, somebody, anybody. Uh, well, we'll start with Mr. Clark Weens, who is the board president of Circle Cinema.
Thank you for being here in Tulsa with Miranda. We loved your first movie. We love this one as well. I guess the obvious question before we go into more details on this one, what's in the works now? What's coming up?
I'm working on a novel right now. I don't know if everyone there knows, but I do a few different things.
We know.
And one of them is writing fiction as well.
Yes.
So it's time to get back to that career.
We have Mr. Booksmart in town here right now. Jeff, why don't you want to ask her anything about her novel? Yeah.
Hi, this is Jeff Martin. I do a little nonprofit literary thing here. So I wanted to ask you about your short fiction. I loved your short story collection. And I know you have an upcoming event at Symphony Space for selected shorts, which I'm sure many people here listen to selected shorts. Is that going to incorporate some new work as well as some of your past work? What's that going to be?
Right. Actually, this is cool because I have the book, which you guys can see for the first time. It's not the novel, but it is a new book. But I have to run in the other room and get it. Is that all right?
That would be great. That'd be awesome.
Okay. Oh, wait. I just realized I gave it away to my summer intern.
That's okay.
I knew there was a reason I shouldn't have done that. But it's called It Chooses You, and it's an unusual book for me because it's a nonfiction book, and it relates to this movie. When I was writing the movie, I got kind of stuck at a certain point, and I decided to take a break, and I started interviewing people who were selling things through the classifieds, through this thing called the Penny Saver, the like local print classifieds. And I didn't really know why I was doing it. I just was kind of sick of myself and of Sophie and Jason at that point. And eventually, so the book is all the interviews with those people and photographs of them, and then also kind of about my creative process, because eventually I met an old man named Joe, who's the old man in the movie you just saw, the man who sells the hairdryer to Jason, and that's his house, his clothes. He's a total non-actor. That card that he read, he wrote that. He made all these like very filthy cards for his wife, and then he plays the voice of the moon as well. So that was just kind of a bizarre synchronicity, and just kind of how the creative process works sometimes. I mean, sometimes you can only get back to the heart of what you're doing by moving away from it. So the book is about that, and it comes out in November.
Well, that's wonderful. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about your creative process and why there's a cat narrator for the film?
Yeah, the cat narrator, I'll just tell you that because I can remember how I first started writing that. I was sometimes when you're writing, I don't know if there's any writers in the audience, but you kind of like do like just a free writing, like, without even knowing what you're writing, just to kind of loosen yourself up, especially if you're kind of deep into a writing project that feels very closed. And so I just started writing one day this voice, this monologue, and I didn't know what it was. Like it was like written as if it was speaking straight to the audience, and that seemed kind of weird. Nothing else in the movie was like that, but I just kept going with it. And then I later on saw a stray cat get hit by a car, like a neighborhood stray cat, and no one else saw it, so I had to bury it, and that voice that I was writing kind of became the cat. I don't know how that happened, but I just kind of accepted, like, oh, this makes sense if this is this cat. And then I spent a long time trying to figure out, well, why do I have this cat in this movie? And there were, there's a few reasons. I mean, obviously it's also kind of standing in for a baby, like an unborn baby. But for me, it also began to have a lot to do with the experience of time and of how much of one's life you can spend waiting, waiting for like your parents to really see who you are, like long past the point where that really makes sense to be expecting, or waiting for some man or woman to fall in love with you and, relieve you from yourself. And so I wanted to have one character who was just waiting for the whole movie. And because it seemed like, well, if this movie's about time, that was important to somehow show that version of time. And then I wanted waiting to die, for there to be an end of waiting and some sense, some hint of the life that exists after that, the totally new sense of self that exists when you let go of that one kind of hope.
Okay, wonderful. Questions, please. There you go.
Yeah, Miranda, it's very nice to meet you, even if over the internet. I very much enjoyed both of your films and your collection of short stories, and somewhat because of your unique voice, but also when I saw Me and You and Everyone We Know, the thing that stood out to me most was you as an actress. That just really struck me as something different than anything I had ever seen before. I was just fascinated by you as an actress. I thought it was unlike any performance I had ever seen in my life, and stood out in a very good way. What made you decide to cast yourself in your films, and will you continue to do that, or what was that like, figuring that out?
Yeah. I think it could have only happened by being like a non-decision. I would have been totally embarrassed if I had ever had to decide, like, I want to play the lead, because I'm not even an actress in the kind of sense that I'm not in anyone else's movies. But this is how I came into making movies, was by writing things, sometimes live performances and sometimes short movies, writing things and then acting them out myself, and often and always directing myself. And then with my short movies, often shooting myself too, like not even having a camera person, but just sort of running around to the other side. And, gradually those movies became more complex, and I stopped playing all the characters myself and started casting, men to play the men and children to play the children. But I always just kept doing the part that seemed like I could do it too, I think because it was my way of my kind of way of orienting myself in the medium. That's how I thought of myself as a filmmaker and an artist. So with Me and You, it was the first time anyone had questioned that. I did have people who said, like, well, maybe Maggie Gyllenhaal, like there's a lot of great people who could be in that part and it could get more money. And it just seemed sort of silly to like bow out now, since I was already placing all my bets on, wow, fire truck. on what I do, you know, the specific thing that I do anyways. So I might as well just go all out and try that. So that's how I ended up doing that in the first movie. Thank you.
Miranda, having watched your first film, and we were in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we weren't privileged enough to have that film. It showed at the AMC, so obviously we were quite jealous. And it opened to almost universal praise. Now I know what the New York Times wrote about this film and other films, but I've seen some discouraging remarks written about it. How does that affect you when you think you've done a good piece of work? I'm just curious. We all have egos. We have that in common. How did that work, or did that affect you? And maybe I'm wrong on that. I just read some negative, but not like I did on the first one. Any?
Right. I mean, I guess to me, the response seems fitting given what I know of the world and my own relationship to it. And which is to say, not, you know, of course, I'm proud of my movie and I love it. But at the same time, I've been me for a long time, and like I know that not everyone likes me, and in fact the more people that are exposed to me, the more people who aren't into what I do I'm going to come across. So I mean, that's not, obviously it is a different movie. It's a sadder movie. In some ways it's a stranger movie, and it's less easy to open your heart to in a way. For some people. I mean, I've also, of course, there's always the people who are like, I didn't really like Me and You. It seemed, you know, but this is a real film, you know, so you begin to realize like, oh, there's, you know, you're on this hopefully long path of making a lot of different things. And some of them, probably the minority, are going to kind of weirdly connect in a broad way. But most of them will probably just be a really interesting next step in the path. And more importantly, kind of the only thing that I can do next. I mean, it's not like I'm the kind of director who's like, you know, what project should I pick next? I mean, you know, I'm kind of living and dying up there. This, you know, this is, yeah, I'm making the only thing I can make in that moment. So in a way that kind of liberates me from having to be like overly concerned with that, which is not to say I don't, you know, work so hard to try and make it work for an audience. And I'm not trying to like, you know, alienate people. But I also think, you know, people are not idiots, you know, and you don't have to like, try and be like every other movie that's doing well in the theater, you know, like that's just not, you know, that's a whole different game that I'm obviously not playing.
Well, we, as an endorsement, we're certainly keeping you another week here, and we hope that it is done fairly well. Be candid with you, we have to fight for space in our local paper, and they didn't see fit to review you. And so we fight, and we'll give it another week and see what develops. One thing I'd like to ask, we've seen you dance a little bit in the movie and stuff. Do you have musical talents too? You seem like you can write, you can direct, you can act. Do you have some musical talents also? Maybe I've overlooked that. Musical?
No.
Okay. That's how we'd cover
No
the
musical.
bases. You're a very talented lady, and it's such a privilege to have you amongst us here in Tulsa. Do you have any other questions?
Well, thank you, by the way. It is, you know, there's also a really big change that's, of course, happened since my first movie, which is like everyone's watching movies online now. So it is really tough to stay in the theaters. And I do so appreciate just getting to be in a place where people watch things together at all. So
thank you. We call that
you.
community, and that's how people learn and do things together, and we appreciate that very much. A young lady has a question.
Hi. I
Hi.
love you so much. I'm so happy that you're here in a sense with us today. I just had two questions directly about the movie. I'm not trying to like read into it too much, but I thought since you were here, I'd just ask you.
Yeah.
I was kind of curious about, first of all, Shirty, because I loved Shirty. And I was wondering, does it say the night in French? I couldn't tell what shirt he said. And I was wondering if that relates to like some kind of real life experience. And I also was kind of puzzled by the girl, the daughter, and that sort of threw me. I was just wondering, like, was Sophie too busy saving the girl that she lost the cat? Or I don't know. I was just wondering if you could speak in general towards what you were doing with the girl.
Okay, as a rule, I only answer one of two-part questions. So I'll go for the first one. Shirty, I have a real shirt that's a security blanket that I've had forever. It's not nearly as clean looking as that one. And if I were to ever forsake, wow, my battery's running really low, but I think it'll be fine. If I was ever to flee my life as Sophie did, I think that my shirt might come crawling after me. I mean, it predates every way that I've created my identity. So that's where the idea came from. And yeah, it says "C'est la nuit." This is the night in French, mostly just because I wanted there to be some text on it, so you would get the sense that it was like a T-shirt with something written on it. But I put it in French because I don't really speak French, and that would make it less distracting to me. And then actually a funny story about that, later when I was editing the movie, I looked up nuit just to make sure I had gotten that right. I was like, does that really mean night? And I typed it into the internet, and it does mean night, but it also is an Egyptian god. This is from Wikipedia. An Egyptian god who you climb inside of and come out of transformed. What? Oh my God. That seemed like so coincidental. Such a wonderful synchronicity to me that that was very reassuring also. You can look it up, Nui.
We're going to be bringing Deborah Granick out here to the University of Tulsa, and it seems to me that there are more and more women who are taking the reins of films and doing all the stuff that needs doing. How much of the finding the support of the people who put the money up for the film and all that do you do, or how does that process work when you take off your writer's hat and put on your director's hat and producer's hat?
I do it with another woman named Gina Kwan, who I met right before when I had the script of Me and You. And yeah, she doesn't have any money. We just go together and have meetings with companies. No U.S. company wanted to finance this movie without a bigger star than us attached. So it's all financed with foreign European money. You may have noticed all those long German words at the beginning of the movie. It wasn't a great time. It was kind of the start of the recession when we were looking for money. So everyone was trying to get rid of projects like this, sort of not particularly commercial seeming projects. So in a certain way, it was harder than the first movie, I think, because of that. And it's always I shot this in 21 days, which is nothing. And I would love to have more days and just a little more money. And yeah, it's almost impossible making movies at this budget level. It sort of doesn't quite work. You're like taking it out in like human blood, sort of. But it's very satisfying.
Good. How much of the material is fully scripted? Do you do scenario type work where there's some improvisational work being done, or is it all scripted out in detail exactly as we saw it?
It's all scripted. Yeah.
You and Wally Shawn, huh? Other questions? Okay, here we go. There's a young man here with an interesting T-shirt on.
Hi, I'm Chris. I
I,
was just wondering, in the movie, whenever the cat is narrating and it shows his paws, how did you do that with the?
yeah, I'd love to tell you, but and I didn't mean for it to be mysterious, but I'm so pleased that it's not obvious, on a really low budget movie. Like it's so exciting to have anything in the special effects department that doesn't, that seems mysterious. That I haven't told anyone the answer to that question. So unfortunately, I'm not going to tell you. But we did it very simply and cheaply, and you can probably figure it out. I have to move to where my plug is, so you'll see some of my office.
All right, here's another question for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So what advice would you give to other aspiring, well, I mean, you are a filmmaker, but what advice would you give to people who are aspiring to be filmmakers?
Well, often people who ask me that have a script that they've been wanting to make for a long time, and I would say just make something right now. It might not be that script, which takes more money than you have right now. Maybe it'll be like, a short film or, just a shorter version of that film or something. But I feel like all of us get stuck in this kind of waiting for other people to give permission, even ourselves in a way. Sometimes I feel like, it's one of those mediums, unlike writing or live performance, playing music, where it seems like more mysterious than it is, like someone has to give you the stamp of approval, or you have to go to school for it or something. And obviously, we all, with the technology, you could all make a movie tonight after you leave here, and put it online and get a little bit of an audience at least. So yeah, I just say using the immediacy and fluidity of that is especially great when you're just starting, because that's like your special power is how new everything is to you, and you'll never have that again. So best not to waste that sitting and waiting, because for the rest of your life, you'll love to see the things that you made so freely and spontaneously.
Are there other questions? Anybody else? Oh, here we go. Sorry.
Hi, Miranda. My name's David. My question is a two-parter, so if you just want to answer the first part, I won't be offended. My question is, do you find it difficult to shift between mediums, and what is your favorite medium to work in?
Okay, well, those are at least related. When the two-parters are actually just two questions, then I just pick one. But is it easy to shift? It kind of is. I mean, it's interesting. Right now, I'm shifting from movie head to novel head, and part of it, I think, is like the food that you feed yourself. And I notice that a lot when I go to like a bookstore. I'm sort of still drawn to look at all the photography books and like art books, but I consciously think like, well, then you're just going to have a bunch of visual ideas, maybe movie ideas or art ideas, and that's not what we're trying to do right now. In fact, we've got a lot of pressure to write a novel, so I consciously go and try and find some really inspiring work of fiction to read. So it's a little bit, sometimes I almost feel like a kind of dumb animal or something, and I can just kind of leave myself to whatever is the task at hand. And then a lot of times I'm working on a couple things at once, and that can actually be a relief. Like when I was working on the script for this movie, I would stop in the afternoons and go work on these sculptures that I was making for the Venice Biennale. Actually, look, I have these sketches for them right here, which won't, here, I'll just show you one. That's a headdress that you put your head in. Okay. That was the sketch I was drawing when I was writing the script. And then I made the sculpture, and it, you know, it's a nice thing to get to kind of move your brain over to like a different side of it for an afternoon, you know, and come back to writing feeling like new about it. And then what's my favorite one?
Yes, that was the other part of it.
I don't really have a favorite. I mean, they're all sort of painful in their way, you know? I mean, writing a book gets really old. Making a movie is just almost physically impossible, you know? So, you know, and therefore they all seem like the best one when you're not doing it, that one, you know? I mean, it really looked fun to write a book when I was editing my movie, you know, but of course now, yeah. So, yeah, but I guess I will say like writing does seem to be at the core of most of the things I do, other than that headdress. So.
Well, we have to make room for an audience to come in for the next film. So we're very, very,
All
very
right.
grateful for your time and very, very grateful for your work. Thank you for sharing it with us.
Well, thank you for coming and for staying. Have a good night there in Tulsa.
And you as well. Thank you.
All right. Good night.